Well, I want to tell you stories. We enter into this message today called Loving Jesus. We're in a series called ENDGAME, and it's based on a verse in Galatians where Paul writes, the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. And so we've been focused on love the last few weeks. I want to talk about loving Jesus today, because really that's the greatest love of all, is to love Jesus. Several years ago, a sociologist named Tony Campolo was in Hawaii on a speaking gig. And because his body didn't adjust to the time change real well, he found himself wide awake at 3:30 in the morning. So he went to a diner to get a bite to eat. And while he was there, he noticed some ladies sitting at a table. And they were ladies of the night, and they had finished their job and came there to get something to eat. And one of the ladies mentioned that she'd never had a birthday party, and tomorrow was her birthday. And Tony heard that, and when those ladies left, he went to the man behind the counter and said, "Who are those ladies there?" He said, "Well, they come in here every day at 3:30 in the morning." And he says, "Oh, who's that one lady? Her name's Agnes." And he said, "Well, tomorrow's Agnes's birthday, and I really want to throw her a party because she's never had a birthday party." And he said, "Well, that sounds really cool. Why don't you do that, and I'll make the cake, and my wife will make some refreshments to give out." And so the next day at 2:30 in the morning, Tony Campolo shows up, puts up a sign that says, "Happy Birthday, Agnes," strings crepe paper throughout the diner, and then about 3:15, people start coming in, and this place ends up being packed with a bunch of ladies that somehow the word got out on the street that there's going to be a birthday party. And then at 3:30 sharp, Agnes shows up with her friends, and as she walks in the door, everyone shouts out, "Happy birthday, Agnes!" And then the man behind the counter brings out the cake he'd made that's all lit with candles, presents it to her, and she holds it while they sing Happy Birthday. And while they sing, her knees start to wobble, tears go running down her cheek. She'd never experienced this before. And so when they were done singing, someone shouted out, "Cut the cake!" And she said, "Can we not? Can I just leave it like this for a while?" And Tony said, "Sure, it's your cake. You can do whatever you want with it." So she walked out of the diner with her cake. And Tony thought, "Oh, this is kind of awkward because it's her birthday party and she's not even here now." So he did what a lot of preachers do. "Let's pray." So he said a prayer, prayed for Agnes, prayed for her health, prayed for God's will to be done in her life, and prayed for her to be saved. And then when he got done praying, the guy behind the counter says, "Hey, you never told me you were a preacher. What kind of church do you go to?" And in just one of those brilliant moments, Tony Campolo said, "I go to the kind of church that throws birthday parties for prostitutes at 3:30 in the morning." And he said, "No, you don't, because if there was a church like that, I would go to it." And you know, I think Jesus was loved by people who were so far from him. He would show up at a tax collector's house for a party. He'd show up at various people's houses. He'd mingle with people that others thought he shouldn't be mingling with. Jesus was very well liked by the ungodly people. And the ones that were most uncomfortable with it wasn't them. Even though Jesus expected more from them, wanted them to live differently, they weren't turned off by Jesus. Jesus wasn't turned off by them. The people that were most bothered were the religious people looking in on that. And so I want to talk to you today about what it's like to love Jesus. See, it's been shown that we give and receive love differently. There's kind of these love languages. I don't know if they're official, but there's actually at least 5 different languages that people give and receive love. For example, words of affirmation, saying "I love you" to someone, writing a nice note, writing a card. For many people, that's how you communicate love to them. For others, it's an act of service, doing something like when you clean the house or when you finish the deck or whatever it is that you show love to your spouse or family by. It's an act of service. Sometimes it's quality time together. When you spend time with me, I feel loved. Sometimes it's through gifts. You took time to make or find this gift, and it speaks volumes of your love for me when you do that. And other people, it's just physical affection. Hug, a kiss, handshake, pat on the back, cuddling, all those kinds of physical signs of affection. And you receive love in one of those ways predominantly, and then you often think that, well, if I love other people the way I like to be loved, they'll feel loved too, but that's not always true, because they may receive love differently. And so even if you have multiple kids in your family, you start to realize I can't always treat them all the same, because this one wants quality time, this one wants to snuggle, this one wants to, wants words of affirmation and be encouraged. And so when I look at those 5 love languages, which do you think is Jesus' love language? Some of you would say all of them, but I'm going to tell you, my opinion is not even on the list. And here's why. In Jesus' own words, I want to read to you a passage where Jesus, I believe, says very clearly what his love language is. It's found in John chapter 14, verse 21. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me. Whoever has and keeps my commandments, that's the person who loves me. In other words, Jesus' love language is spelled obedience. Obedience, that's his love language. You say you love me? Simple, just do what I say. Do what I say. I love Jesus when I do what he says. It is choosing his will over mine. I was reading about a pastor the other day. His name's Chip Ingram. He said when he was young and in ministry, a guy came to him for counseling and said, Pastor, I'm really struggling because my wife met a guy at the gym and she's been having an affair with him. And she says she loves him, but she also says she loves me too. Now, let me ask you, can she? Is she really loving her husband by what she's doing? Or are her actions negating what she's saying? I mean, didn't she say at one point, you and you only? I give myself to you till death do we part? And now she's shacking up with some other guy? So that's how she shows she loves her husband, by being unfaithful? No, that's not love at all. You can say one thing, but your actions speak louder than words. See, in our culture, we've learned, we've talked about this before, speaking love or feeling love seems to be most important. But in the Bible, it's actually acting in love that's most important. It's not that saying you love someone or feeling you love someone doesn't matter. It's just what you do says it even more. It's louder. It's like this guy that said to me years ago, I'll trust the tongue in your shoe more than the tongue in your mouth. Think about that. I'll listen to what you do more than what you say. And the problem is, music is all about how I feel and what I think, not about what I do. All these love songs that are out there, even a lot of our worship songs, we'll sing like, I love you. One of my favorite songs when I was a new Christian was, I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul rejoice. I love that song. And I think God loves to hear that song when it's accompanied by action. When I go out and do my own will, even though I say I love it, it means nothing. It totally wipes out what I'm saying. Actions must back up the words. That's why I'm real careful about what I sing at times. I like to think through, like, do I really believe that? Do I really believe that's true about me? For example, there's a great hymn. It's called, All to Jesus I Surrender. All to him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him, in his presence daily live. All to Jesus I surrender, humbly at his feet I bow. Worldly pleasures all forsaken. Take me, Jesus, take me now. And I have to say, at this moment of time, is that what I want to do? Am I all in with Jesus? Am I living daily in his presence? Am I willing to surrender anything to follow him? Am I willing to say, Jesus, take me? Even if you need to take me to heaven, take me now, I'm ready to go. Is that what I mean when I'm singing that? I go, no. I'm more like, part to Jesus I surrender. Part to him I freely give. Or 5% I give to Jesus. 5% I freely give. We need to think about what we're singing, because words don't mean much when they're not backed up by action. We prove it by what we say. And so Jesus says, here's how you show you love me. Do what I command. In the Sermon on the Mount, he said, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. So it's not what you say, it's what you do. Building on his teachings. If you love me, Jesus says in John 14:15, you will keep my commandments. Okay, so I love Jesus. I want to keep his commandments. So what are they? How many are there? Well, in the Old Testament, you probably could boil it down to 10. 10 commandments. That was a good summary of the Old Testament law, the 10 commandments. First 4, loving God. Second 6 are loving other people. And if you do those, you're considered a really good person. But in Jesus' day, religious leaders took those 10 commandments and they took other teachings of the Old Testament and they said, actually there's not 10, there's 613 rules. 613 laws you must keep if you really want to please God. And they had to do with your diet, clothing that you wear, the fabric they were made out of, how you interacted with other people, how you gave, all kinds of things, but especially surrounding the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a real special day. And so they had all kinds of rules. Like, if you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, when does movement become work? Is it when you start sweating? Is it work? No, because if you live in the Middle East, you probably sweat all the time. Okay, so when does it become work? They determined, this is their ruling, you could walk 2,000 cubits on the Sabbath. And that was the distance from Mount Olivet down to Jerusalem. So they figured that would be a safe walk. So 2,000 cubits. That's about 2/3 of a mile. You walk beyond that, now it's work. Some of you would say, 2/3 of a mile, Pastor, that's work for me. Okay, that may be work for you. So 2/3 of a mile, you go, almost worked. Didn't do it. And people got very nitpicky about it. I mean, even tithing, you read about Jesus saying there are people who tithe from the spices that they were gaining from their gardens. Like, let's get a little 10% of the cumin, and that goes to God. So they were just dissecting the law and making it so detailed that the focus was on obeying to the finest detail. And we see that today. When Julie and I went to Israel a couple years ago, on an elevator that we took to our rooms, I noticed a setting called Shabbat, which is Sabbath. It was a special setting for the elevator. And what happens is if you flipped on that switch, which they did sundown Friday night, and it stayed this way until Saturday evening, is that elevator would constantly go up and down. It would go to the first floor and then open. Go to second floor, open. Third floor, open. Fourth floor, go all the way to the top, and then it would come back down, open, open, open. It would just do that all day long. The reason is because if you touched a button, that was considered work. So if you're Jewish, you could get on the elevator, never touch a button, eventually get to your floor. And if it was a big hotel, you were very lucky if a Gentile got on the elevator and pushed a button for you. Now, you couldn't ask them to do that, but if they pushed the button to the floor you wanted to go to, you go, all right, I'm going to follow that guy out the door, and you didn't do any work. But see, it's so meticulous. You get to these crazy rules. I had a friend who's a contractor down in Arizona. He said in neighborhoods that are highly Jewish, he says they actually have markings on the power poles of where they can go on the Sabbath. I said, you're kidding me. And they watch and go, oops, a little bit too far. Let's back up now. Because it's work, and we're going to break the Sabbath. It misses the heart of it. And I think Jesus, when he came, said, you know what? Let's wipe out all these rules. I'm going to make it really simple. I'm going to make it so unforgettable, nobody could miss this. Here's what Jesus said is his command. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. That's it. That's my commandment. All of it's summed up in that. Other scriptures say the same thing. All the laws are summed up in this one commandment. Love one another. You go, oh, I thought there were two commandments, love God and love others. Well, here's the problem. People would often say, I love God, I just don't like people. God, I love you. I love you, God. I worship you. I'm faithful to you. I can't stand those people from another race. I can't love those people with different color skin. I can't love those people that are too old or too young. I can't love those people that are poor, that are rich. I can't love those people that are Democrat or Republican. And see, Jesus said, you're missing it. How can you not love people made in my image? All those people you just mentioned are made in my image. You say you can't love them, and then you're telling me you love me? Inasmuch as you've done it to them, you've done it to me. So I'm going to make it real simple. You really love me? Love the people I made on this earth. Love them. And you go, okay, I'll try my best. He goes, no. No. Don't try your best. Try my best. See, love one another as I have loved you. That's the standard. As I have loved you. See, most of us would look at how Jesus loves people, and you go, man, Jesus was so generous. He gave his time. He was always involved with people. He was always serving people. He was such a servant. He gave himself sacrificially on a cross for people. And so what does it mean to love Jesus? It means those things. It means I'm going to love people like that. And you go, I can't do that. Pastor, how can I love people that? That takes a lot. He said, yeah, because it's not in you to love like that, but Jesus is in you to love like that. The reason we need Christ in our life is we can't love as he has loved us unless he is in us. And so Jesus lives in us so that we can obey his commandments, and his commandments are pretty simple, to love as he loved. Now, I want to make clear that you don't hear something wrong. I'm not saying that though Jesus' love language is obedience, we're saved when we obey him. We're not. The Bible is very clear. No one is saved through their obedience. Obedience is the fruit of salvation. It would be like if you're married and you just feel like, man, I'm married. I need to get a job. I have responsibilities around the house. That's what I contribute to the marriage relationship. But see, I don't get a job and I don't cook the meals or mow the lawn to be married. I do it because I'm married. I don't do it to be married. I do it because I'm married. It's part of my commitment in the marriage. I come to Christ, and because I'm committed to Christ, now my part of bringing something into the relationship is I'm bringing my obedience to him into the relationship so we can be partners in this relationship. So we're not saved because we're so good. We become good because we're saved. Does it make sense? So obedience is God's love language, is Jesus' love language. But yet obedience by itself is not enough. What I do for Jesus must be driven by love, because it's possible to obey Jesus and not love him. And there are people in churches all across America who fit that category. Very good people. They don't steal. They don't commit adultery. They don't cuss. Very, very externally good people. They just don't deeply love Jesus. And you see that all through the scriptures. I mean, obedience is good, but it must be coupled with a heart that wants to obey, with a submissive heart. There's a story of a dad who was arguing with his 8-year-old son. And it got pretty intense, and so the dad just leveraged his dad authority and said, "Son, you sit down in that chair right now." And the son very slowly sat down and said, "Dad, I'm sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing on the inside." That obedience without submission is not true obedience. Obedience must be from the heart. That's what Paul was affirming in the church in Rome when he said, "Thanks be to God that you who were once slaves of sin have become obedient from the heart." From the heart. It comes from the inside. Paul is commending their joy because he wants it to come from the inside. Because it's so easy to conform on the outside. Jesus said of some people, "This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." You can pray. You can talk about God. You can preach. You can do all kinds of things verbally and still have a heart that's far from God. He says, that doesn't impress me. I see right through that. You know what we call that? Hypocrisy. He wants it to be from the heart. Jesus wants our hearts. And there was a story that I think illustrates real clearly someone who got Jesus' heart far better than someone else. It says in Luke's gospel, one of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And behold, a woman of the city, who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment. And standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head and kissed his feet and anointed them with ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she's a sinner." And Jesus answering said to him, "Simon, I have something to say to you." And he answered, "Say it, teacher." A certain money lender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii, the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now which of them will love him more? And Simon answered, "Well, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt." And he said to him, "You have judged rightly." Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little." In other words, your love for Jesus is proportional to your perceived need of grace. If you come to Jesus and say, "I'm so lost. I'm such a hypocrite. I'm such a bad person. I really need grace," God pours bucket loads of grace on you. But if you're a person that says, "I'm actually pretty good. I did lose my temper a couple weeks ago, and I think a cuss word slipped out at work once. But, I do need some grace, not as much as other people, but I do need some." And God says, "Okay, here's a thimbleful for you." A thimbleful, because you don't have much of a need for grace. You don't have much of a perceived need of grace. Let me emphasize perceived, because actually the need is just as great. That's Jesus' point. You, Simon, don't see that you have a need. And therefore, you don't have much to be grateful for. She has a huge need, and she is so grateful because I've cleansed her of her sin. See, the greater your awareness of your sin and need of grace, the greater your capacity to receive grace and then have reserves to give to others. And the people who receive the most grace are the most loving people. And the people who are very askew and looking at themselves, think, I'm not really that bad of a person. You've received very little grace, and then you don't have much to give because you don't have much. So Paul, the Apostle Paul, was someone at one point in his life thought he was a really good guy, really good. I mean, he kept the rules, upstanding. But when Paul became a Christian, he had a totally different view of himself. Instead of patting himself on the back and saying, I was pretty good, I just missed it by a little bit, Paul says, oh man, now that I look at my life, I really screwed up. I was a blasphemer. I abused God's name. I was a persecutor. I hurt people wrongly. I was an opponent of God's mission. I was trying to stop people from spreading the gospel. Oh, Paul looks at himself and says, was there a worse sinner than me? I'm the chief of them all. And you and I could look at Paul and go, oh, Paul, you weren't that bad. Paul goes, no, you have no idea what was going on in here. The depth of pride, the hatred I had. I was awful. But because of my awfulness, God saw mercy and poured out grace upon my life. And so Paul then to turn around and say, I've received so much, I have much to give now. And for you and me, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, if we think we're not that bad, we're not going to have much to give to others. The greater the degree of grace we've received determines how much then we have to give. And God's a giver. He says, love is from God. It says in 1 John 4:7. He wants to pour his love into us. So we want to be obedient to God, but we want to make sure that obedience comes from a heart of love. And when you do this, something amazing happens. We get to know Jesus more and more intimately. See, I read a verse at the beginning of this message that I want to go back to again and read the second part of the verse. John 14:21. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me, and he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. Now, I was thinking about that verse all week long, wrestling with it, because it says, if I keep his commandments, I'll be loved by the Father, and I'll be loved by Jesus. Well, I thought he loved me already. He loved me before I even gave my life to him. Didn't it say that for God so loved the world, he gave his one and only Son? Yes, that's true. There's like a baseline of love for everybody in the world. But there's a deeper kind of love that's reciprocated when we express love to Jesus. And it's the same with every relationship. If you have, say when my wife and I got married, I would say even before we got married, we fell in love with each other. We could say, I love you, I love you. And it was real, it was meaningful. But after 32 and a half years, we've reached different levels of love. A lot different. We know each other better. We've been through so much more. We've given each other grace. And so there's more love. And that's what God's saying here is, I love you, but we're just starting. I want to go further in this love relationship. I want to take you to further and further levels. And so what does it mean when Jesus says, if you do this, I'll love you in deeper ways and I will manifest myself to you? That word means I will reveal myself to you. I will show myself. What does it mean? I got all excited this week. What does Jesus mean by this? He's going to show himself to me as I'm walking with him. Well, I reflected on my own life and I started to think, one of the ways he does that is we start to recognize his voice. That voice of Jesus doesn't feel like a stranger anymore. You get to know it and you respond to it more quickly because you've gotten used to listening and obeying. As Pastor Matt was sharing that passage from Proverbs, you hear that, you don't fight against it. You go, oh, I should be doing that. That's what God wants me to do. That's what it means to love him, to live like that. I'm going to do that. And the more you get into the rhythm of doing that, his voice is familiar. And so you start hearing through the day like, you should call somebody. You should give to that person. You should go speak a word of encouragement to that person. You go, I know that voice. That's my shepherd's voice. Jesus said in John chapter 10, the sheep follow him for they know his voice. Another way I think he reveals himself is through his truth. If you look at any expert in a field, athletics, music, even cooking, some of you like those cooking shows, everyone has their little secrets, like secret habits, secret information that they've just learned over the years, like here's what you always need to do. They've learned it over years and years of practice. And those people have kind of knowledge that helps you to move up to another level in your skills. And I think it's a similar in our walk with Jesus. There are truths about life that as we start to learn from Jesus and put into practice, it makes our marriage better, it makes our parenting better, it makes our work life better, it makes our finances better. Every area of life gets better. Why? Because we've learned those secret truths. We've learned those truths and practices that help us. Jesus said in John chapter 8, To the Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. There is a freedom that comes because, Jesus, thank you. I mean, this is different than what I learned in school, different what I'm hearing my friends say, different what I'm hearing on the TV, but I'm doing it your way, and I'm looking at the results, and it's awesome. It's great. I'm just seeing things kind of work. Life is working now that I'm listening to you. He shows us his truth. He invites us to the inner circle. He welcomes, we welcome his presence in a greater way in our lives. In John chapter 14, verse 23, Jesus said, if anyone loves me, he'll keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. Now, I always talk about Jesus being in us, but he says the Father too. Like, I'm bringing Dad too, okay? Now, when we become a Christian, Jesus comes to live in this home called a heart. And it's real. Jesus comes to live inside of us. But if you could picture your heart like a home, a lot of us give Jesus the guest room. And maybe the guest room is downstairs in the corner. So that's where he stays. And we're okay saying, Jesus, you get yourself comfortable. We'll put a TV in your room. Just mind your own business. And then Sundays we'll invite you out, okay? But in reality, what we want to do is let Jesus roam the house. And be involved, like, come into the kitchen when we're there and say, hey, what are you doing? Well, hey, Jesus, this is what's going on in my life. As we're getting ready for the day in the bathroom, Jesus says, hey, what do you got planned for today? Well, I'm planning this. To enter into a conversation with Jesus with every area of your life, to invite him into the bigger picture. It's really making him feel at home in you, like you want him there. You're not annoyed by him. You're not trying to push him off and say, Jesus, you keep asking me to do stuff that's too hard. It's like, no, I want you. I want you to keep teaching me and directing me and changing me. I want that because ultimately that's the biggest way I think he reveals himself is that he changes us into his likeness. We become like the people we hang out with. And if you hang out with Jesus, you'll become more and more like Jesus. In 2 Corinthians 3, it says, we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. In other words, little by little, you are being shaped and refined so you reflect Jesus. Then when people look at you, they see Christ in you. Do you know that Christ has been wanting to be revealed in you, in your life? That when people see you, he wants them to see him in you? It's kind of like a piece of old furniture. We look at an old piece of furniture and it's got layers of lacquer or paint on it and it looks like it's ready for the dumpster. And someone else comes along and says, hey, wait a minute. If we strip all this crud off, we strip all this stuff off, get down to the bare wood, and we sand it and refinish it, it will look beautiful. And we're like that because we have layers of shame and guilt and hurt and pain and all these things layered over our lives. And sometimes we feel like I'm worthless and someone else may think we're worthless. But God looks at us and says, no, there's beauty underneath the surface there. I just got to strip back all this stuff. I need to forgive all this stuff in their lives and wash it clean so they can start anew because inside each one of us is a beautiful reflection of Jesus. And it comes as we walk with him and learn to follow him and let his love flow through us as we love one another. We become more and more like Jesus. God wants to change you, wants to change me. He wants to make us like his son. And I want to ask you, do you love Jesus? See, in that story of the Pharisee and the prostitute, you identify with one of those two characters. Either you're the person that says, I'm really not that bad. I don't need much forgiveness. I like Jesus. I like hanging around Jesus, but I'm not overly excited about it. I'm not overly grateful. I'm just happy. Or you're a person who says, oh, you have no idea how grateful I am. You have no idea what it means to me to know Jesus and his forgiveness. It means the world to me. I'd give up anything for Jesus because of what he's done for me. You're in one of those two places. And if you're the first, if you're like the Pharisee, today's the day to repent of that. To look at yourself and see what he sees, to see the depth of the pride, the arrogance, the self-righteousness. Those are sins too. And let him cleanse you of it. And so I'm going to ask you to stand. I'm going to invite our prayer partners to be up front here as we sing. We're going to sing a love song to Jesus. But it's only going to mean something as if it comes from the depth of your heart. And so let's lift up our voices to him today. And if you need a fresh washing of forgiveness. If you need layers of sin just kind of peeled back off your life today, maybe there's hurt in your life, maybe there's shame, and maybe there's guilt, and you need the Lord just to wash that and give you a fresh start today. Our prayer partners want to minister to you the healing power of Jesus Christ. And let this love flow out of our gratitude. Where there's greater grace received, there's greater love expressed, and let's express it now.